I'll try and break this down for us. While we were, starting and adding our rice holes, Josh began the process up here. Right now we are currently monitoring our mash progress here. So we've got our grain and water percentages going in.
Okay.
I can see that we have 89 and 6/10 barrels going in as our strike water. Before that, we have about 8 barrels of underlet to just cover our false bottom. So in total, we'll have about 97 barrels of water in this vessel, with the nearly 7,000 pounds of grain.
Yep.
We can go out and take a peek, but the program will control our rakes and plows for us. So we're running at 2 rotations per minute, and they're about 2 inches off of the false bottom. As we fill that up, the rakes and plows will just move with the body of the solution there. And
so one question that I have, like in some tanks that are kind of like inherently dirty, like that take a lot of soil, because the hot side of things is very soil heavy, because now you have that dense wort, it's hot, it can cling to things. How effective is your CIP at keeping those sensors in a state where they're reliable? If I'm making sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Outside of our preventative maintenance that we do maybe once a month on those, and then our quarterly preventative maintenance as well, our CIP is real in depth. It takes about 50 minutes a vessel. It hits every pathway, it gives proper coverage. We'll see this later today, but a CIP cart, a whole skid, and again with programmable recipes that go through step by step on the washing side as well as the rinsing side. We can typically tell when a sensor is failing just from here on the computers when we start getting weird readings, or we also, all of this is monitored and recorded, so we can go back, days, months, years, and pick out different brew days and look at each one of these sensors on graphs, on different graphs, comparing and contrasting. And so when we want to look at maybe, I don't know, if we're seeing weird issues with our differential pressure, we can compare batch to batch every time we've made the batch.
Where is the differential pressure shown on here? Is it shown on this screen?
So right here, this is our differential pressure. So we have a reading from below the false bottom and then what's currently on top. It's not going to be super accurate.
Especially at mash end.
As of now, but it being negative more or less tells us that the grain bed itself is floating. Which is what we're typically looking for throughout most of the process. When we see it start getting positive is that last 18 to 20 barrels. We've developed some strategies to try and ease that situation as it arises. Some beers it just takes a little bit of enzymes. Some beers a little bit more rice holes. Some beers we got to run our pump slower at certain stages of filling the kettle, manually lower our rakes to help with channeling, because they're spin at like 0.1 rotation per minute as we fill the kettle. But if we want, we can go take a peek at what the Lauter tun's looking like. About 20% of the way there. So we can see the plows are extended, and they're just like skimming around the top. All of the liquid is coming in up and to the right.
You can see it splashing right over the top of the rake there.
And we typically
so that plow is down right now. And it's not, I'm assuming it's not flush to the bottom, or is it flush to the bottom?
It can be flush to the bottom. It's what helps us get all of the spent grain out. It'll lower to the false bottom itself. Part of the Lauter ton preventative maintenance is making sure that the rubber on those is good, that they still meet flush with the bottom. We'll use it throughout the process.
That works. Do these rakes run throughout the entire process?
Of mashing, yes.
And then do they spin it all during Lauter?
They'll spin, yes, during Lauter, they'll spin for about 0.1 rotation per minute. After we mash in, so once we get all of our volume in, the plows will lift. We'll push compressed air in to lift the plows. And then the rakes themselves will spin for about 5 minutes. So as I mentioned, with our salt tank, since we're adding pickling lime today for our pH, Josh is our acid doser. So he's manually dosing this tank for us. We typically do that at about 25% of the volume. So if we're adding enzymes to help with Lauter or phosphoric acid or any other kind of Lauter addition that isn't grain and isn't in our salt tank, we typically aim to do that at 25% of our mash ins. That way temperature is kind of set in place. It's not too high, too low. It's still got a lot of time to try and work into solution. Just one of those numbers that we found through practice. So right now we have just finished mashing in. So we've got all of our grain and all of our liquor in. So right now the difference is you can see our plows have retracted.
Yeah.
And so they're now above our grain bed. And we do a 5-minute spin where the rakes stay submerged to just make sure everything's homogeneous.
Yeah.
When this 5 minutes is done, that's when we'll start our mash rest timer. We'll take our pH, we'll take a temperature sample, record those.
How do you draw a sample
logs.
off of this? Is this one we're scooping?
Yeah,
over
so
here? Okay.
That's one of our long ones. I'm old school. The way I've been doing it for the last nearly 6 years. It's this much shorter guy. And it's just, reaching in with the arm.
Sure.
I'll avoid it now while they're actually spinning.
Yeah.
But Josh, who's running the house today, we'll get a sample.
Yep. Are there 4 arms in there? Is that what I'm seeing, or is there 3?
Yeah, so four sets of rakes.
Yep.
And on 2 of the rakes, there are plows.
Okay. Okay.
So
very cool.
Very efficient for us. So that'll spin. We'll start
What
our
are
mash.
these?
And so this is plates, so we can unscrew these and take it off in order to get like a ladder in. Hook a ladder on, we can put the ladder into the top, hook it here, and then pass out pieces of the false bottom.
Yeah.
Pass out maybe the rakes if we had to take the rake if one broke or chipped. The plows maybe.
Yeah.
So, but generally there's a big slit here, so mostly for false bottoms.
Yeah.
Or if we need to run
so you can feed the false bottoms out and back.
Yeah, since they don't fit through the manway.
Yeah. How often is this thing, how often is that built into your yearly maintenance? How many times where the whole thing's being shut down, locked down, tag out, all that good stuff, and you're fully pulling the rakes, you're maintaining things inside of that?
So we'll do preventative maintenance on the false bottom quarterly unless we notice something's wrong with it. But yeah, they'll quarterly do that. I don't think we've deconstructed it on purpose in maybe 3 years.
Yeah.
So we replaced the motor on the spindle on this a few years ago. Had to ship it over to Germany to get repaired and get it shipped back to us. And at that point we broke it all down.
Yeah.
But yeah, typically unless we find a false bottom that's like lifting off or peeling off or has some kind of damage to the structure, we're not doing much more than making sure it's all in the same piece. So Josh is currently watching our whirlpool as we're knocking out that first batch, making sure we're not going to start pulling any hot material or any of the cone. Try and signal to Dan when we've got enough. So I'm going to measure our mash temp and get
I see you opted for the small temperature readout here. I'm teasing.
So this is our analog.
Nice.
This is our analog. We have a digital readout. I just prefer.
Well, I tell you what, a lot of times, like with digital or whatever, like I think sometimes people don't realize, these can be like adjusted and calibrated relatively easily. I like using that. I do love how big of a readout that it has.
Yeah, it's very easy to read.
Yeah.
So just prefer this. I'll usually move it around here in a minute to try and get a better, accurate sample. I've got our chilling column going.
Oh, and so you can filter right through that. I was going to ask, because I've seen so many people do so many different things. So kind of a rough strain on that right there in order to get your sample.
Yeah, just, because I am eventually going to pour out here, I do want to try and separate as much of the grain as possible.
Sure.
I don't want to have to take this apart and clean it today. which I could do.
Okay, so it's an all-in-one column here, and that's just being held through the bottom. So you're eventually going to pull that sample off the bottom. I see. Yeah, I've seen it where you can kind of like set it in and then the water will exit out the side. I've seen it built a couple of different ways. I like that.
Yeah, so this is real handy for us. So let that go. You can all know how heat disperses through the mash. I just try to, I think we're looking like a 158 right now. Go up and over.
How long does it usually take to chill this sample?
Maybe like 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's
so convenient.
Very convenient.
So convenient.
It's a set it and forget it thing.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Is that groundwater or CLT water going through there?
So that's just going to be CLT water, so straight from our tank.
What's your CLT at typically?
Damn, maybe like 50.
Yeah.
It's cold.
Yeah.
I mean, you can feel it as you go, but yeah, that stays very cold, and it changes as like the groundwater is. But oh yeah, no, it's real chilly.
Yep.
Maybe even like 40. Really helps with our, because we keep our hot liquor tank like 180. We try to pull off at like 175, so we're constantly doing a little bit of mixture there.
Yeah. So on the water side, before that water goes into HLT or CLT, how is there anything that happens before that water goes in there? Is there any filtration, any carbon filtration, anything like that?
Yeah, so we have a reverse osmosis water situation.
Oh, no kidding. Okay, so you're RO.
Yeah, so we're all RO here. We don't have any like, what is it, de-aerated water.
Yes.
No DAW. So yeah, we have a large RO tank that we keep in the back, and we can go take a look at it when we go down to the cellar. But that will provide both of our, that's all of our brewing water comes from that. All of the like hose water that we use in operating comes from that. We have a few draw-off ports around the facility where the RO is pumped directly to. So if we need to sanitize a small tank or a piece of equipment, we can pull RO water and hand dose it. But it also, supplies our HLT and our CLT.
Yeah.
HLT also gets resupplied as we knock out. We'll pump cold our CLT through the heat exchanger, and we'll collect it back in our HLT. So for today's mash, we started with 100 barrels, 120 barrels in the HLT, throughout mash in and throughout sparge, dried it up, knowing that as we knocked out 110 barrels, that we'd refill it up for the next mash in. And that all comes from like an operator like skill side of knowing where to keep that tank leveled at, so we're not overflowing, creating a danger for people on the floor. Just keeping a good monitor on both the levels of those tanks throughout the day and preparing for the rest of the week.